But let's talk about conservation of energy. Let's start with intro. This one's a little shorter. Intro physics. Physics. Again, we're still using night. But this one's really straightforward. This is just initial energy is equal to final energy. This is what you learn. And I spend a month on this usually, or more in my classes, talking about conservation of energy. You have the potential initial plus kinetic initial is equal to potential final plus kinetic final. And there's all sorts of different variations of this. You got gravitational energy, you got spring energy, you got all the energies. Okay? Can time crystals travel through time? We're going to find out very soon. We're going to find out very, very soon. But yeah, so you have harmonic harmonic motion, which is like pendulum or springs, and gravitational. So like we can think about a simple one, right? With gravitational, right? Okay. You know, it's not too difficult to imagine gravitational energy and gravitational conservation of energy with gravity. You can imagine a system held to a certain height such that the initial energy on this side, there's no kinetic energy because it's being held stationary. It's released from some height and hits the object, so we're going to call the object the height 0, so the potential energy is gone. And we just have this kinetic energy 1/2 mv squared. Notice that the masses don't matter, so you can easily rearrange everything to find that v equals the square root of 2g times h, okay? 2 times g times h. So if you hold it, you can even do this in your head. You hold, an object 10 meters off the ground, use 10 for the force of gravity. The square root of 10 times 10 is 10, multiply that by the square root of 2, which is 1.412, and you get what? Like 14.1 meters per second, right? You can just do that in your head. And it's pretty easy to test, right? You do this in your introductory physics lab. You just take an object, you hold it out to a certain height, you release it, you measure both the time it takes to hit the ground, the distance it takes, find the acceleration, kinematics, find the velocity, right? And then you compare that to your conservation of energy. Here's one that's a little less familiar, a little less intuitive, okay? Oh, they're coming back, everybody. You know they are. Here we have a coupled pendulum system, okay? This is going to be a different one because now the conservation of energy is not going to be as straightforward as it was previously, okay? Before it was just like, hey, you just drop it and you expect that it can find the velocity relatively straightforward. Now, if we take this coupled pendulum system, and I only start one of them, so I'm going to start the right one. I'm going to put all of the energy into the motion of the right one, okay? Now this one is starting to swing, and it's actually taking energy from this side. Look at this. Now this one has stopped, right? It's stopped, but now this one has all of the energy. So the energy on one side will end up being transferred to the energy on the other side, and it's the same energy. But in the middle, the energy is going to be evenly divided. The energy is pretty much being transferred up through this wire from one to the other. And now there is some loss to like friction, to the environment. This is not a perfect system, but you can imagine it being a closed system where this would be straightforward, energy transfer from one to the other. So that's the introductory physics thing. Now we have two more to do. We have the Lagrange Mechanics. So mechanics view of conservation of energy is straightforward. We have some Lagrangian. So I'm going to start with the change with respect to time. This isn't the same YouTube video in the Lagrange Mechanics series as the other one. It's all one. We do the Lagrange Mechanics for conservation of energy and momentum. We do that in one episode, and we talk about everything very thoroughly. Okay, all right. It's okay. Pony's happy, and he's vibing, okay? So we can take the derivative with respect to time of some Lagrangian, who consists of a bunch of generalized coordinates. Again, this is the same thing as I explained with the quantum mechanical stuff. Like, this is showing different ways we understand topics. This is not to say that you should understand this if you're an introductory physics student. It might be fun. I hope it's fun that you can watch and look at this, but this might not be. This is 3 levels of conservation laws. This is the second level. I expect someone who's taken Lagrange mechanics to look at this and be like, I remember that. I did that. But I don't expect anybody who's not taken Lagrange mechanics to be like, I know what that means exactly. So anyway, so there's the change with respect to the Lagrangian. We have all of the coordinates written out. So you can chain rule this together. And what do you get? You get the sum over all of the, and it's kind of similar to what we did before, but now we want to talk about all of the derivatives. We don't have this easy way out of saying, hey, the kinetic acts this way, so we can just worry about the potential. That's not true for this case. So we actually have to write down the derivative of the Lagrangian with respect to with space multiplied by qi dot, and this is summing over all of those i's. This is just a consequence of the chain rule, right? And then another sum we'll have is this derivative with respect to the Lagrangian over all of the velocities multiplied by qi double dot plus the derivative of the Lagrangian with respect to time. Now, I guess there's no closed parenthesis on this. We're going to have to erase to do the quantum mechanics. It's just too much. And I don't feel like squeezing it like I did last time. So the derivative with respect, so let's do this term first. The derivative with respect to the position is going to follow the same thing, right? This is going to get to the same thing we did last time, which is the momentum, but with respect to time. So this is the change in momentum with respect to time. We just did this, and that's just going to be momentum dot, we'll call it. Okay? P dot, or rho dot, or whatever dot you want to. And we also know that this is the momentum, okay? That shows up. You can pretty much see that by just rearranging this one with this derivative with respect to time, right? That this one shows up as the momentum, and then we have this q double dot. So this is just going to be, this is just pi. So this is the momentum, take the derivative of momentum with respect to time, and this is just the momentum, okay? Now. And this gets to here by just rearranging a little bit. But anyways, that's done in the notes if you're interested. And it's done very thoroughly in the Lagrange Mechanics video if you want a deeper dive. Lost my spot. Here we go. So now let's rewrite this. Okay? Let's rewrite the derivative of the Lagrangian with respect to time. And we get the following. We get the sum over all I of the first term, which is just this times this, so p dot times q dot, pi dot times qi dot, and then subtract the, add pi times q double dot from the second term, and then at the end we're just going to add the change with the Lagrangian with respect to time. Now this is a thing that exists, but I will say that most systems were not very interested in this, so we're going to set this to 0, because most systems don't change in time. They just don't. The overall Lagrangian does not change in time. Certain components of it may change in time, but the overall Lagrangian does not. That's the systems that we're interested in. And that's very specific to a lot of things we're interested in. This is just the product rule. So if we were to take d of dt out of this, we would just see this is the sum over all I of p I q I dot. Right? Take the derivative of this, it's the derivative of the first times the second, plus the derivative of the second times the first. Okay? Just the product rule. And then, of course, we have the extra term if it's relevant, but for this it won't be. So now, if we take this dl dt and subtract it from both sides, then we'll find out, so we're going to come over here, that d over dt, we're subtracting the L from both sides, so we have the derivative, we pulled the derivative out. We have the sum over all of pi qi dot minus the Lagrangian, okay, and this whole thing is equal to 0, okay? That's it, we just rearranged it to get that equal to 0. This is the Hamiltonian. This is what I was talking about before. I told you just had to believe me that there's this thing called Hamiltonian, and you get the sum over all the energies. And this is, you had to believe me that it exists in quantum mechanics. This is it in classical mechanics. And then it extrapolates, there's an analogous form in quantum mechanics, and this is really the Hamiltonian, okay? The total energy. And what does this mean? This is the derivative with respect to time of the total energy is 0. That means the total energy is a constant. Okay? Lagrange mechanics says right there that the total energy is a constant. It's conserved. any point you look at the system, whether it's at the initial, the final, or somewhere in between, just like the pendulum swinging back and forth, energy is going to be the same. The total energy is going to be the same. Let's talk about the last step of conservation of energy, the third tier, quantum mechanics. And this is done in Townsend. So let's start by first assigning initial states and final states. So the initial state is going to have some labels, Ni, Li, Mi. Again, we're talking about, now we're just talking about creating and annihilating particles, much like commentator was asking about early on. So we have a state that exists without a particle in the NML orbital or whatever. It's just the description of a place where a particle can exist.
Hi asks, who is PQ minus L in energy?
Wait, why is PQ minus L an energy? It's the sum of all the energy. I go into it detail in the YouTube video, but I didn't go into detail now. Beyond units, you can actually rewrite you can rewrite, where is it? I do go into it in detail in the video, which I'm pretty sure high altitude you know what's going on here. I'm pretty sure you know what's going on. But yeah, so basically wow, static, breaking up. You rewrite the momentum as a form of energy, which we basically did the opposite. We took the derivative of the Lagrangian with respect to the velocity, and we called it momentum. But you can do the same thing with the kinetic energy, because the velocity does not exist in the potential energy. You can find that, and then you can sum over the first term again. I erased it, and realize that that's just 2t. That's just 2t, 2 times the kinetic energy. Then you have 2 times the kinetic energy minus the Lagrangian, which is the kinetic energy minus the potential energy. So it's 2t minus t plus u, which turns out to be t plus u, which is the kinetic. I feel like this is breaking up here. Kinetic plus potential, and we get energy, total energy. Okay, so that is how you do it. It is done in thoroughness in the YouTube video. I'll put the link in the descriptions for those watching on YouTube if you want to go back and take a look at it. But if not, if you're just right now curious, it's done in Taylor. So right now I'm defining initial and final states of of just some atom. So like we have some atom here. LF, MF. This is going to be the energy level that it's at. Initially, this is going to be the energy level as finally, and this is going to be some occupation state. So now we want to take this initial state where there exists 0 particle and create a state where there exists a particle there. So we're going to have some interaction. Basically, what we do is we write the amplitude of this interaction by saying that we sandwich it between the initial and the final states. Okay? We should probably have this as a function of time. We just squeeze it in there. This is a function of time. Very good. Now, let's define the distance in energy, or the difference in energy, of the 2 states as eta. So we're going to have some E final
Welcome to the channel. Things get a
minus
little bit
E initial
weird.
divided by H bar. Welcome to the channel, Pale Horse 999. Thank you for the follow. So, what does this look like? Well, we can write the integral from 0 to t, and we're going to evaluate the eigenvalues of this dt. Pretty much we're going to integrate to kind of cover all of the energy values, which are the eigenvalues of I a to t. And we integrate from 0 to t to get all of the energy levels, right? And this is going to be simplified to 1 over I eta times e to the I eta t. This is evaluated. I think I said simplified, but it's evaluated to this. This integral is evaluated to get to that. Okay? These are actually primed dummy indices. Just be clear about that. I think I made a mistake in the notes. I didn't prime the second indice. I didn't prime this one up here. So make sure if you are following along with the notes, exclamation mark notes, you prime that one. Okay, so then this can be reevaluated under some trigonometric identities as I eta t over 2. Where am I? Divided by, where am I? Eta over 2 times the sine squared of eta t over 2. So far, so good. Now, if we want to find the amplitude or the probability of this is just an amplitude, so if we want to find the probability, we need to take the complex conjugate squared. If we do that, we're going to get the following. The interaction with respect to time of this transition from initial to final squared is going to equal 1 over h bar squared times sine squared eta t over 2, yada yada, yada yada, eta over 2 times sandwiching the Hamiltonian, where all these energy levels exist. These are just energy eigenvalues, and the Hamiltonian is the operator that's going to get us those energy eigenvalues. Okay, so you apply the Hamiltonian to the initial, final, you square, you get this eigenvalues. That's what we're interested in. Those are the energy eigenstates. If these energy eigenvalues, excuse me, not eigenstates, eigenvalues, if these energy eigenvalues are 0, then we're saying that the total energy from going to one to the other is 0. But let's take a closer look. They're not always 0. Spoiler, they're not always 0. So we have to be a little bit strange. This feels weird. This term, this is a constant, but this term is not a constant. This feels weird. This feels strange. Okay, so this is weird. That's weird. How do you get zeros out of that? Well, there's a couple ways to get 0 that's not t equals 0. One of them is to actually have values of eta that will give you 0, right? So this is just a periodic function, so there's values of this will give you 0, right? You can talk about those. Or another way you could do it is you could send t to infinity. Sending t to infinity will make eta very, very, very small and give you a sign of 0 times infinity, which will eventually, which actually turns out to be a delta function. Let me write it out so you can see it. It's a Dirac delta. The limit, I don't know, I put a line there, of sending t to infinity will give you 1 over pi sine squared t eta over 2 divided by t eta over 2, where eta over 2 is squared. And this is equal to the Dirac delta function of eta over 2. Believe it or not, that's how you do that. So now we have a way where this can be 0. Okay? At eta equals 0, this is 0. So we need to consider this as we take t to infinity. Now that's strange, right? That feels weird. But it's not that weird. Basically what we're saying is kind of the same thing. You have to expect to take the expected value over all of time. If you want the law of conservation of energy, if t is finite, you will not be conserving energy in the system. Take t to infinity and you regain your conservation of energy. Okay? So again, this equals 0 when you satisfy this Dirac delta at large t. So you only regain. That kind of makes sense when you think about the unitarity and everything like that. But it is, in fact, is that really how you do it? Yeah, I guess that makes sense, pandemic. Huh. I don't know why, but I always do Dirac delta. That's a whole lot of everything, yeah. I always do Dirac delta with like exponentials now. I don't know why. It just sort of seems easier to me. So I would probably, if I were to actually attack this problem, I would probably convert that to exponentials and see if I can't make it look like the form that I'm used to. But that might be a lot of extra work. I'm not sure. Either way, it's really cool to see that like this exists at time equals infinity. Anything else, and you get something that looks like this. Right? The energy and the time don't commute. There's an uncertainty principle here. Okay. Carried this on long enough.